They thought I'd never find out. My wife. My daughters. All of them. But then I hit play. Welcome to my real story of betrayal. I guess that's how I should start. It still feels strange saying it out loud. That day, I stood in the doorway of the house I once called home, giving it one final, serious glance. I wasn't really looking for anything in particular, just wanted to make sure I hadn't forgotten something meaningful. But within moments it was clear, there was nothing left I needed. Everything I usually packed for one of my so-called last-minute business trips was already gone, just like it always had been. Except this time it was different. I had told my wife of 25 years, her name's Diane, that I'd be parking the company car at the airport again, like I'd always done before. Truth is, the car was still parked at the office along with every single item that still had my name on it. I'm 45 years old. After a long run in upper management, I had just stepped away from the career I gave everything to. I opted for early retirement, taking about 75% of the full pension I would have earned if I stuck it out for 5 more years. But those years weren't worth the cost anymore. I'd maximized my stock options over time, and every performance bonus I earned had gone straight into my retirement fund, untouched by taxes. I never took them as income, never saw a dollar in my checking account. Just watched it all build from a distance, growing quietly but steadily. It turned out to be a smart move. My investments, mostly in tech, had done very well. Better than I could have hoped, actually. So now, my retirement payouts are set to exceed the paycheck I was bringing home while working. That part feels like a small win in the middle of a very bitter ending. I had already set up a new account at a Bank of America branch near the place I'm headed. Somewhere far from here, somewhere quiet. Just this past Friday, I deposited my final paycheck into it. That check included every hour of unused vacation I had saved, and it was hefty. I was also holding another check, the big one, for the stocks I had cashed out, $850,000, net with taxes prepaid. That money was my clean slate. My do-over. And I couldn't risk depositing it until the very end of the business day just in case Diane somehow found out. I had to be careful. If she discovered it before I left, there was a chance she'd try to claim it as part of the marriage assets. I couldn't let that happen. All those tailored suits I used to wear? Gone. Everything I needed was loaded up discreetly under a name that wasn't mine. Uncle John had helped with that. He arranged the rental and I paid every fee in cash, leaving no paper trail that could tie me back to this life. By the time I hit the road, I'd be heading east, far from the coast, back to a quiet little town I used to call home. Diane always mocked it, calling it the middle of nowhere. But right now, nowhere sounds exactly like the place I need to be. I don't have to answer to anyone anymore, not to a job I grew to hate, and not to a woman whose actions made it clear she'd stopped seeing me as part of her life a long time ago. And thanks to everything I've set aside, I've got an emergency fund to fall back on. Just in case. Honestly, I knew I'd be okay. I've always been handy, and if it came down to it, I could make a decent living repairing farm equipment and heavy machinery. Beats supervising blueprints and managing production lines anyway. A distant cousin of mine had already started fixing up my parents' old place for me. It wasn't quite livable yet, but he said I could crash with him until it was ready. Knowing I had that fallback took a lot of pressure off my shoulders. Earlier that day, I called my wife, her name's Kendra, to remind her I'd be heading out on another so-called business trip before she got back from hers. She didn't suspect a thing. My oldest son, Mason, knew a bit more. He's an accountant, practical and numbers-driven, so I had let him in on some parts of my early retirement plan. As far as he was concerned, I was doing all this because I'd finally discovered the truth about Kendra and the man she was seeing behind my back. At first, Mason was skeptical. He didn't want to believe it. But once I showed him the report I'd gotten from the private investigators, the doubt faded from his eyes. He's one of those people who has to see the facts to accept them. Still, I felt a little pang of guilt about what I knew was going to happen that evening. Mason was going to witness something he couldn't unsee, something I never wanted for him. But it had to happen. The truth was overdue. It was a beautiful spring afternoon, the kind that normally brings you peace. The trees were blooming, birds chirping, everything alive again. But all I could think about was how much had changed. Kendra and I first met at an Aerosmith concert, back when life still felt like it had endless roads ahead. She was this sharp, captivating woman from Northern California. I was just a guy from out of state trying to figure things out. We hit it off fast, and within a year we were married. That same day, my parents flew out for the wedding. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Back then, I was working in research and development, and Kendra had her foot planted in the importing and marketing world. We both held down our careers for decades. Even now, Kendra had a way of turning heads when she walked into a room, confident, radiant, always put together. People noticed her. They always had. For a while, I really believed we were finding our way back to each other. The kids were grown and we finally had time again. I'd been making plans for us, romantic weekends just like before. I thought we were entering the golden years of our marriage, where we could focus on us again. Then came the night I got back from a trip overseas. I walked through the front door, set my bags down, and pulled up our home security feed like I always did. Just out of habit. But this time, I found something. A short video clip popped up, something the system had automatically flagged. I watched as my wife and our 3 daughters sat in the living room laughing, talking. But not about family. Not about life or memories. They were discussing the men they were seeing outside of their marriages. The room in the video went quiet as one of them described her latest fling. Another chimed in about the thrill of secrecy. I stood there frozen, watching their faces, hearing their voices, realizing in real time that I had been deceived by the very people I loved most. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the final seconds of the video delivered the gut punch. One of my daughters, grinning, leaned in toward Kendra and said, "Well, Mom, I guess this is your birthday gift to yourself, celebrating 43 with your newest love interest." I don't have proof that Kendra and her boss, Eric, spent every night of that 2-week vacation together in that way, but I also can't say they didn't. And after watching that clip, I didn't really need proof. Because somewhere between the laughter and the lies, I realized what my place in their lives had become: a blindfolded placeholder. A joke I was never in on. I know for a fact that the hotel room my wife and Eric booked only had 1 double bed. There wasn't even the pretense of subtlety. As for my 3 sons, I had a sinking feeling that none of them were thinking much about me at that moment, or how any of this might affect me. But then came the moment that brought everything full circle, the cherry on top of this whole tragic spectacle. Eric Hopper's wife, a striking woman named Karen, just 37, decided to make her entrance. She walked up and calmly handed each of them a legal envelope, divorce papers. From what I heard later, she didn't hold back. Karen had apparently taken great satisfaction in confronting my wife, now her soon-to-be ex-husband's mistress, using some rather colorful language. Honestly, I can't say I blame her. Now, both Kendra and Eric were staring down the same path, being left by their spouses, publicly humiliated, and held accountable for the choices they made when they thought no one was watching. But that wasn't even the end of it. Karen, in a twist of poetic justice, turned to me afterward and said, "Well, thanks to all this, I've got 3 new clients for my firm." She paused with a smirk, then continued, "As soon as the footage from your house came on, your wife and daughters realized they'd left the internal security cameras on." I swear, it was almost comical hearing all 4 of them gasp and say in unison, "We're screwed." She laughed, but there was pain underneath it. Everyone in that room had been stunned, not just by what was caught on camera, but by how casually and shamelessly my wife and daughters had talked about their affairs. There was no guilt, no remorse, just laughter and storytelling like they were swapping recipes. Karen's face hardened, her voice lowering as she added, "They've built themselves a new reality. But what they don't realize is that reality has consequences. And they've only just begun." "Think they'll still be laughing when all of this is done?" I asked her quietly. Before leaving, Karen stood still, holding her husband's phone like it was something fragile. She had been preparing to tell him that Eric meant nothing, that it was all a mistake. She wanted to remind him that their 3 daughters were his, no matter what. But as she stood there, she realized he didn't care anymore. This was his way of making it clear to the world, he was done. Looking back, it's wild to think how all of this unraveled. Karen and I had actually grown up just 20 minutes apart but never crossed paths because of our age difference. I'd already graduated high school by the time she was starting out. Funny how fate works. When I decided to look into divorce, I ended up booking a meeting with her firm, not knowing who I'd be paired with. And by pure chance I was assigned to her. It wasn't until I shared the video evidence with her that she realized the man my wife had been sneaking around with was her husband too. She went pale. I remember the way her whole demeanor changed. What started out as a routine legal consult suddenly turned into something much more personal. She had to step out for a moment, probably to breathe, maybe to break down. We both realized right there and then that we were 2 people caught in the same storm. It wasn't long before her daughters came over to my place. Karen had sent them, wanting them to see things for themselves. I sat them down, showed them how the security system worked, and explained how easy it was to disable the external cameras before entering, unless, of course, you forgot. And that day, well, they forgot. One of Karen's daughters said something that stuck with me. She looked at both me and her mother and said, What hurts the most is that if either of you had been treated with just a little respect, just basic decency, none of this would have happened. I nodded slowly. She wasn't wrong. There was a time when love meant loyalty. But somewhere along the way they lost sight of that. And now, we're all left standing in the wreckage. I'll be honest, I hadn't considered things from that angle until her daughter said it. It caught me off guard and I told her as much. There was something about the clarity in her words that surprised me, especially coming from someone so young. Wisdom doesn't always come with age, I guess. As soon as they left, I picked up the phone and called Karen. I wanted her to know how the conversation had gone. I hoped it had helped, even just a little. Later, she told me her daughters found me easy to talk to, that I made them feel heard. That meant more to me than I expected. But the calm didn't last long. A few days later, Kendra showed up at my office unannounced. I don't know what she was hoping to accomplish, but the minute she walked in, I could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. She accused me of lying, claiming I knew exactly where my retirement checks were being deposited, or that I could easily find out if I wanted. I told her flat out that even if I did know, I was legally bound not to release that kind of information. Doing so could cost me my job or worse. That was when things started to spiral. Her voice rose. Her words got sharper. Security ended up having to escort her out of the building, which I hated. But I couldn't let her cause a scene in my workplace. Still, I couldn't help but chuckle a little once she was gone. I probably shouldn't have, but it was one of those so ridiculous it's almost funny moments. And it turns out, it did get better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. My son David called shortly after, and I could hear the amusement in his voice. "Dad," he said, "you won't believe this. Carrie called and said her mom, Kendra, got fired. Apparently, she lost her job right after Eric Hopper was slapped with the $5 million alienation of affection lawsuit I had filed against him. Word spread fast. She had to call a taxi to get home. No company car. No sympathy. I wish you were here," David said. He always was the type to process things best in person. That day I realized something else. Over the years, people had come to me with their ideas, their worries, their plans, and I'd always listened, helped them figure out what made sense and what didn't. I hadn't even thought much of it. It was just who I was. When David asked if this was my new cell number, I told him it was, but asked him to keep it quiet for now. I wasn't ready for the world to reach me again. I left him with one final thought. Next time Kendra asks about me, just tell her this: she can always go back to one of her other friends for support. They all seemed fine with what she was doing before, right? And if she tries to argue, just say, "Well, for the last 10 years, that was your chosen family." Later that night, Karen shared something she had told her own daughters. "I told them you're old enough now to decide for yourself what kind of person you want to be. Learn from what you've seen, learn from the choices I've made and what I'm dealing with." That hit me hard. It landed differently. That was when it really sunk in. Kendra was never going to find another man like me again, not because I think I'm special, but because of the way everything ended. The breakup was public. Messy. And in a town like this, people remember things. Word travels faster than truth. And her actions had already written a story no one else would want to step into. Her past, our past, was now her reputation. Meanwhile, I had my hands full in a good way. One of Karen's friends, Bill, a guy who'd worked construction for decades, gave me a list of reliable local crews he trusted. But he went a step further. 2 hours later, he showed up at the house with a handful of those guys in tow. That gave me enough time to start unpacking and thinking through the next chapter. After walking through the place and inspecting every room, it became pretty clear: fixing up the old house wasn't worth it. It would actually be cheaper to tear it down and build something new from scratch. The electrical wiring was ancient, all the pipes were old lead, and the walls had to be stripped to the studs. The only thing still holding up well was the barn. With a new roof and a few boards replaced, it could be as solid as ever. The plan now is to build a new home right on the same spot. We'll dig a new garage with direct access beneath the house, insulate the crawl space and double up the flooring insulation. We're even planning an entry point from the furnace room. And here's the best part: everything I stand to walk away with from the divorce will more than cover the costs. It's not just a house. It's my fresh start. One that's finally on my terms. I had just wrapped up a call with Karen, letting her know that I'd touched base with her brother and signed the contract to begin construction on the new house. It felt good to be moving forward, concrete steps toward something new, something truly mine. Not long after, my phone buzzed again. It was David. "Dad," he said, his voice sounding more cautious than usual, "Carrie hired a private investigator. They're trying to find you." I didn't need to ask who they was. Kendra still hadn't let go. According to David, she believed that somehow we could patch things up, that we could go to marriage counseling and undo all the damage. I stayed silent for a moment, then asked him, "Is she actually serious about counseling?" "If she is," he said, "you should try to find someone with a more traditional mindset. Maybe exposing her to a different perspective, something grounded, might shake her out of this worldview she's been in for years." He wasn't wrong. I tried to show her balance in the way I lived and raised our kids, but it seemed anything I'd tried had been quietly eroded over the years, subtly countered by her own influence. "If she can't find that balance," I told David, "there's no real chance. And for your own sake, for your peace of mind, you've got to be honest about that with yourself." After we hung up, I had to smile for a different reason. Karen was flying in to visit, and I'd just picked her up at the airport. It was the first time I'd seen her dressed down, just a pair of blue jeans, a soft yellow blouse, and a denim-style jacket that suited her in a way I hadn't expected. She looked natural, wholesome, like someone finally at ease in her own skin. It was refreshing. I figured she wouldn't have had time to eat on the flight, so we grabbed her suitcase, tossed it in the back seat of the truck, and headed over to Ruby Tuesdays. I had a little surprise waiting for her there, something simple but thoughtful. I wanted this visit to feel light, easy, a change of pace for both of us. Meanwhile, David had been keeping quiet about certain things. He hadn't said much to Kendra. He'd only confided in his oldest daughter, Carrie. She had taken it upon herself to confront her husband about Colin, her son, demanding a paternity test before any further contact. David told me her husband just laughed it off. That laugh, though, it hit her the wrong way. That wasn't how a man was supposed to act when his family was unraveling. Lately, little Colin hadn't been himself either. He'd always been the one constant in Carrie's life, a calm, well-behaved kid who followed the rules and gave her some sense of control when everything else felt chaotic. Now he was unpredictable, moody. That shift hit Carrie harder than she expected, and it forced her to come face to face with just how much had changed. Later that weekend, Karen and I sat outside, letting the breeze wash over us. She turned to me and said something that stuck. "There's something calming about all this, being here, feeling still. Moments like this remind me what real quality of life looks like. But you only feel it when both people are truly ready for it." It was an eye-opening weekend for both of us. We spent time talking, reflecting, not just on the past but on ourselves. And while we grew close, we didn't cross any lines. We both wanted more than just another rebound or a brief comfort. We wanted something meaningful. That weekend, I also got the chance to meet her parents. It went well. Her dad even put me to work, had a tractor with timing issues and a few small repairs around the place. I didn't mind. I've always found a certain peace in fixing things, even when people can't be fixed quite so easily. We met up earlier that day for coffee just to check in and make sure everything was still moving in the right direction. And you know what? For the first time in a long while, I felt like it actually was. "I hope you won't be upset," Amber said with a smile as we walked into the restaurant. "But I invited a friend to join us. You might want to slide a little further into the booth." Karen gave me a curious look as she moved over to make room. "Amber, what are you up to?" Amber just grinned. "It's someone I've gotten to know over the past few weeks. Meadow and I, well, we both agreed we'd really like to spend more time with him." That's when Meadow leaned in, her voice soft but steady. "You were right, Dad," she said. "We're building a new 4-bedroom house. It'll be finished next month. We want it to be ready, just in case you and Karen decided to come." I blinked, caught off guard. "So," Meadow continued, "you'll have to let Mom know what color schemes you want for your rooms. We're making space for you." I looked between them. "You were both planning on us coming?" Meadow's expression turned hopeful. "We were hoping," she admitted. Karen nodded gently. "But we knew the decision had to come from you. If I had tried to force it, you both would have blamed Colin. And he doesn't deserve to carry that weight." Later that night, I returned to my suite, setting up a wake-up call before heading up. Security at the front desk recognized me right away and signed me in, which meant I could finally get my first look at the finished design. This was the part one loved most about the job, seeing the final product polished and ready for the next stage. Research and development can feel monotonous, but moments like this, they make all the long hours worth it. I dove straight into testing before the rest of the team arrived. By the time they showed up, I was already knee-deep in it, literally. Covered in dry mud from the prototype testing site, I must have looked like I'd been dragged through a construction site backwards. That's when Carrie spotted me. "Hi, Dad," she called out, walking toward me with that careful mix of affection and nervous energy. "You're looking good. Do you have time to talk to us?" I glanced over at David, who gave me a subtle nod. I read the message clearly. Sure, I said. Let me grab a quick shower first. A little while later, David joined the girls and me in the hotel lobby. All right, I said, you two can wait here or come up to the suite. It's got a kitchen. We can order food in or eat down here, whichever works best. Let's go to your suite and order something, Meadow replied. Feels more private. Once we were settled upstairs with plates on the way, the conversation naturally circled back to the past. It's not unreasonable, I said carefully, to seek outside help when you're struggling. But your mom, she let outside voices shape her beliefs. Over time, society's opinions became more real to her than the vows she made. She justified stepping away from our marriage, convinced herself she was right to do it. Carrie looked at me, pain in her eyes but no denial. Dad, you're right. I think she still blames you for how it all ended. I nodded, not out of pride but from the heaviness of knowing. She probably always will. I had finally reached my limit. I told my sisters flat out, I was done listening to Kendra's justifications. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I had a marriage I tried to save, one I gave years of my life to, and watching her twist the truth to suit her narrative was more than I could stomach. We got into it. Tempers flared. I told them both, when you pull your heads out of the clouds, or wherever they've been, we can talk. But until then, don't waste my time. I wasn't going to sit around and nod while they defended the indefensible. I also made it clear that pretending to be high class, while spreading around a sort of social infection, passing off selfish choices as empowerment, was something I wouldn't tolerate. They needed to understand that betrayal dressed in expensive clothes is still betrayal. No one gets a free pass just because they say the right buzzwords. Karen thought the whole thing was hilarious. Not the fight but the way I finally stood my ground. Those young ladies are going to be thinking long and hard tonight, she said with a smirk. Because the truth is, without love, or real responsibility, someone's always left paying the price. Then she asked, mind if I tell Amber and Meadow about all this? I nodded. Go ahead. If someone wanted to light a stick of dynamite without a match, she said, you couldn't have done a better job. About 2 hours later, Carrie called my room. There's something most people never understand, Dad, she said. I asked, what's that? The ability to think clearly. To break things down logically even when it hurts. I paused for a moment. That's exactly what makes your mother's and my walk in life so different. Welcome to my world, sweetheart. Too bad you had to learn it the hard way. Wednesday night, I joined Karen for a family dinner. Her girls were there too. The twins, Faith and Hope, wanted to start planning for the move and how we'd all pull it off together. I shared some of what I'd heard from Carrie the night before. It sparked a bigger conversation. Faith gave me a look and said, we've probably been listening to too much of your conservative views. She wasn't being snide, just honest. Then she added something I'll never forget. Mom used to say in one of her rants, so what if other people get hurt? They should learn to grow up. She always said the only real wrong in today's society is getting caught. There are no consequences for social crimes anymore. Hope chimed in. Look at our federal government. Some of the biggest politicians have gotten rich illegally, and no one does a thing. The law doesn't apply to everyone. That's why everything's so gray. There's no black and white anymore. Then she looked at me, softened her voice. So, Dad, why are you in town really? Karen jumped in. Girls, why don't you go ahead and get his new number? Dinner turned into a little celebration. I told them about the new house and how it was almost ready. I explained why I was back in town, and why it mattered now more than ever. That night, I also learned Karen had 2 daughters of her own, just a little younger than my girls. We were all figuring this out together. While we were eating, Hope got a text from her older sister. Just a simple check-in. You two doing okay? Hope replied, having dinner with Dad and his girlfriend Karen. Faith and I will stop by afterward to explain everything. She even signed the text Faith and Hope. That hit me harder than I expected. Like maybe we were starting to come full circle. Meanwhile, Kendra had been spinning her wheels. I heard through the grapevine that she was raging, telling her friends that Colin walked out and filed for divorce just because she was finding a little comfort on the side. She couldn't understand it. Everyone in her circle was doing the same thing. Why was she the one facing consequences? Her exact words as I heard them, why can't he just get over it? I should never have married a narrow-minded man like him. His principles always got in the way. And there it was. The truth she'd been hiding even from herself. She didn't just cheat on me, she resented the very values I lived by. And that explained more than anything else ever could. She had finally come to see it, what I had seen so clearly all that time ago. Carrie, standing in the middle of the kitchen, quietly picked up the phone and called her mother. She knew where the documents were. She also knew her mom needed to hear the truth again, this time without all the justifications. Kendra had spent months trying to downplay what happened, reshaping it in her mind. But the reality had been captured on that video the night she returned from Vancouver. And now, after 12 long weeks, it had finally clicked for her. She had made her choices, and by doing so had shaped her daughters into mirror images of herself. In my eyes, they'd become reflections of the same decisions that had wrecked our family. No man could be expected to carry that. No wonder I walked away. It hadn't been about revenge. It was about self-respect. In the end, Kendra had left me no choice. And only now, seeing it from the outside, did she begin to understand. If everything ever came out publicly, it would tear apart the image she tried so hard to preserve. And yes, I knew it. I had always known. The day of the first full family get-together at the farm, Karen and I were scrambling like any good hosts. I checked the grill's fuel while she headed inside to change clothes after finishing the grocery list. We swung by my suite so I could grab a quick shower and shave before heading out to shop. We pulled into the parking lot of the local grocery store just as she read her list aloud, and as we stepped through the sliding doors, there she was, Kendra. Walking out, alone, holding a half-full paper bag. She stopped right in front of me, not angry, not cold, just tired. "Colin," she said, "please let the girls know I'm selling the house. If they want anything from it, Carrie still has a key." Then she walked away. Later that same week, I sat down with Amber and Meadow. "I need to tell you something," I began. "Last Tuesday, your sisters confronted me about the way I'd been treating their mother. They didn't like how distant I'd become. I ended up asking them to leave. They looked at me in disbelief. That night, in a heated moment, Carrie said something that stuck with me. She told them, 'When your casual dates are taking you out, buying you dinners, giving you gifts, aren't you just being paid in advance for your company?'" Amber's jaw dropped. She hadn't seen that side of the story. "Your mother and I were raised differently," I continued. "We were taught early on that it's not just about how we see ourselves, it's how we live that defines who we are." As September came to a close, the final steps of the divorce were nearly done. The farm had seen a flurry of activity, deliveries coming in, furniture arriving, tools getting hauled out. Uncle John was a godsend. He helped organize everything, hauling furniture to Goodwill, setting up the new rooms, finding homes for the things we no longer needed. Neighbors stepped in too. It reminded me of the kind of community we used to have, before everything changed. On the first Friday of October, Karen met me at the airport. The second I saw her, I couldn't stop smiling. She was glowing, and Amber and Meadow were right behind her, laughing and waving like we were some kind of movie scene. And then, just a few weeks later, on the last Saturday of October, we stood hand in hand, surrounded by both sides of our now blended family, and exchanged vows beneath an open autumn sky. Carrie and David had flown in with little Colin. It meant everything to have them there. But what I didn't know was that Karen had saved a surprise for the very end. After the ceremony, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "To my darling husband, Colin, and to all of our family gathered here today, I have one more announcement." She placed her hand gently over her belly. "We're expecting a new addition to the family. Our doctor says it's a boy, and he's due in May." The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat. And then the whole place erupted into laughter, cheers, and applause. After all that heartbreak, after the betrayal, the rebuilding, and the healing, this was the life I never saw coming. But maybe, it was the one I'd been meant to live all along. Thanks for listening. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Have you ever stayed silent when your heart was breaking? Would you have done the same? And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got more stories to tell. Some messy, some healing, all human. See you in the next one.